Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepless Scientist, a quiet place in the cosmos where your thoughts can unwind and knowledge becomes a soft lullaby for the night. Tonight's journey will take us into one of the most mysterious and slippery ideas the human mind has ever tried to hold: time. Not the ticking hands on a clock or the glowing numbers on your phone, but the deeper thing behind them, the rhythm that seems to carry everything forward, the invisible current that moves all that lives, breathes, and changes. But before you settle in and let the world slow around you, I'd love if you could take a moment to like this video and subscribe. Only if you truly find these quiet explorations enjoyable. And when you're ready, leave a comment to let me know where in the world you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. It's always a gentle wonder to see how many corners of the earth we share this same moment from, each of us in a slightly different now, so feel free to dim the lights. Maybe there's the soft hum of a fan nearby, or the sound of rain brushing against the window. Let your breath settle, let the day slip off your shoulders. Time will wait for us, or at least it will seem to. Tonight we'll wander together through centuries of thought and discovery, from Newton's precise ticking cosmos to Einstein's curving fabric of space, from the quiet signals of neurons to the strange shimmer of quantum uncertainty. And somewhere between physics and feeling, between clocks and consciousness, we might just glimpse what time really is, or why it may not exist at all. So whenever you're ready, let's begin our slow journey into the mystery of time. If you close your eyes for a moment, you can probably hear it. A rhythm that doesn't come from any machine. It might be the ticking of a wall clock in another room, or the slow pulse inside your chest. Either way, it's a kind of music, steady and familiar. We trust it. We build our lives around it. Time, we think, is the one thing that never changes its pace. But even as we listen, that rhythm hides a secret. Every tick, every heartbeat, every sunrise we think we measure is really just our way of keeping up with change, not with something flowing on its own. Humans have been trying to pin down time for as long as we've known how to look up at the sky. Ancient people watched shadows crawl across sundials, watched the moon swell and shrink, watched seasons turn the colour of fields. Each of these was a way to make sense of movement. It was never time itself we were measuring, but how things changed. Light across stone, buds into flowers, day into night. Time was a pattern we learned to trust, not something we could see. When mechanical clocks appeared, they did more than tell us the hour. They changed how we thought. Before, life was guided by sunlight and harvest, by sound and hunger. After the clock, life became divided, predictable, measured. The steady tick became a heartbeat of civilization itself. And then, when the British built railways that crossed the island faster than the sun could seem to move, confusion set in. Noon in one town was no longer noon in another. Schedules collided. So they created something new, Greenwich Mean Time. The idea that there could be one master rhythm for everyone, a single pulse the world could agree on. It felt right. It felt orderly. Yet, beneath that comfort, there was an assumption so deep we barely noticed it, that time was the same everywhere, running like a perfect metronome from one end of the cosmos to the other. This was the view of Isaac Newton, who imagined time as absolute, a vast invisible river flowing steadily forward, never faster, never slower, untouched by the things within it. He saw it as the backdrop for all motion, the stage on which the universe played its parts. And for centuries, that view worked beautifully. With Newton's laws, we could predict the fall of an apple, the orbit of a planet, even the tides that whispered against distant shores. The idea of universal time gave us confidence that the cosmos was comprehensible, a grand clockwork ticking with divine precision. Each event, each motion had its moment. Everything was knowable if only one could measure time finely enough. But something about that picture didn't quite fit the way the world actually behaved. As technology sharpened our clocks and telescopes, strange inconsistencies began to appear. Light, for example, refused to obey the same simple arithmetic as sound or motion. It didn't add or subtract its speed the way everything else did. No matter how fast you moved toward it or away from it, light's pace stayed constant, a cosmic law that refused to bend. That quiet rebellion cracked the smooth surface of Newton's eternal clock. At the dawn of the 20th century, a young physicist named Albert Einstein began to ask an unsettling question. What if time itself isn't absolute? What if it stretches, bends, and slows, depending on where you are and how you move? What if there is no master rhythm after all, only a collection of local tempos, each one personal and relative? His thought experiments were almost dreamlike. He imagined chasing a beam of light, watching the universe shift around him. He imagined falling freely in an elevator, weightless, while gravity itself seemed to vanish. And out of those quiet, imaginative games came a revelation. Time and space were not separate things at all. They were threads of a single fabric, space-time, curving and flexing around mass and energy. The old river of time had become an ocean with currents and eddies, moving differently everywhere. It's strange, isn't it? To realise that the seconds we count are not identical everywhere in the universe, that your heartbeat on a mountaintop beats slightly faster, in the language of physics, than the same heart at sea level. The difference is microscopic, but real, so real that engineers must correct for it when designing GPS satellites, or our navigation systems would drift off course. Time runs differently for them up there, above the pull of Earth's gravity. Even here on the surface, your head experiences time ever so slightly faster than your feet. You will never notice it, but the universe does. The beauty of it all is that no clock is wrong. They each keep perfect time in their own frame of reference. There is no single cosmic tick-tock ruling over all. Time is relational. It depends on who's asking and where they stand. And so, the simple tick of a clock and the steady thump of a heart, those faithful symbols of constancy, are not as constant as they seem. They are conversations with gravity, speed and change, whispering their tempo back and forth. What we call time is more like a dance than a march. It makes you wonder, if every moment beats to its own rhythm, then perhaps what we call now is not a universal truth at all, but a personal note in a vast overlapping symphony. The universe isn't waiting for us to catch up. It has been moving in its own quiet tempo all along, and yet there's comfort in that thought, that each of us, in our own small corner of space and heartbeat of time, shares the same mysterious song. Imagine standing on a quiet platform, the cool metal rails stretching into the horizon. In the distance, a train is coming. You can feel it before you hear it. A deep vibration in the ground, a slow rush of air, the faint shimmer of motion. Once upon a time, that train was more than just a way to travel. It was the reason we invented modern time. In the 19th century, people still lived by local hours. Noon was when the sun reached its highest point above your town, and that was good enough. But when railways began crossing entire countries, schedules fell apart. A train that left one city at noon could arrive in another before it had departed, at least by local clocks. Meetings were missed, shipments confused, arguments started. The world was suddenly moving faster than the sun, so Britain declared a universal time, Greenwich Mean Time, measured from a small observatory perched on a hill near London. The planet would tick to one rhythm. It was a bold idea, that we could take the universe's most mysterious force and turn it into something reliable, mechanical, human. For the first time in history, people thousands of kilometres apart could agree on when they were. A telegraph wire could carry a signal that meant the same moment for everyone along the line. Time had been tamed, and yet, even then, there were hints that this taming was an illusion. The Earth itself didn't spin perfectly. It wobbled, slowed, and shuddered in subtle ways like a great breathing animal. Noon wasn't quite the same from one day to the next. Astronomers had to add tiny corrections to keep the clocks honest. The more precisely we tried to measure time, the more it slipped through our instruments like sand between fingers. For most people, though, Newton's version of time still felt right. A steady river flowing endlessly forward. You could build a bridge across it with mathematics, predict the future by charting the present, and trace the past like a map. Time was the great neutral witness, eternal, equal, and absolute. It did not care about where you were or how fast you moved. Everything in the cosmos, from comets to candle flames, obeyed the same steady beat. But nature, as it so often does, had other plans. By the early 1900s, our instruments had become precise enough to catch the universe whispering a contradiction. When scientists measured the behaviour of light, they found it would not obey this steady beat. No matter how quickly you moved toward it or away, light speed stayed constant. It was as if the universe had chosen one absolute thing, the speed of light, and sacrificed all others, including time, to preserve it. To make that work, the old idea of simultaneity had to go. Einstein's theory revealed something quietly astonishing. Two events that seem to happen at the same moment for you might not be simultaneous for someone else. If you're sitting still and two bolts of lightning strike both ends of a long train, you might say they were perfectly simultaneous. But for someone on the train moving toward one flash and away from the other, the timing will be different. They will swear one lightning bolt came first. Both observers are right. There is no single universal now. The rhythm of time itself changes with motion. That discovery didn't just alter physics, it changed philosophy. The universe was no longer a giant clock. It was more like a web, where each thread carried its own vibration, its own sense of when. Einstein's equations describe this beautifully, but we don't need numbers to feel it. You've already lived it. When you sit quietly with a friend and talk deep into the night, hours vanish in what feels like minutes. Yet the same hours spent waiting in a doctor's office feel endless. We each experience our own tempo, not because of speed or gravity, but because the mind measures time emotionally. The universe, it seems, does the same, but on a cosmic scale. If you were to travel close to the speed of a light, time for you would begin to slow compared with those you left behind. A long journey at such speed might pass in a few heartbeats for you, while years could roll by on Earth. It's not science fiction. It's been measured. Astronauts orbiting Earth live this truth every day, aging just a few microseconds less than those below. Tiny as it is, it proves that time is flexible, elastic, alive. What's more, gravity plays a similar trick. The stronger the gravity, the slower time flows. Near the surface of a massive planet or the lip of a black hole, seconds stretch out. To an outside observer, clocks down there appear to move slower. Yet to anyone within that deep gravity well, everything feels perfectly normal. The seconds tick at their usual pace. Reality itself agrees to disagree. These differences are subtle on Earth, but they shape our technology in quiet ways. Global Positioning System satellites orbit far enough above Earth that they feel slightly weaker gravity and move quickly relative to us. Their onboard clocks tick faster than ours. Without constant correction, their timing errors would cause your map to drift by kilometers each day. Even our modern sense of direction depends on accepting that time flows differently in the sky than on the ground. It's poetic in a way. The very system that helps us find our place in the world only works because time refuses to be the same everywhere. The dream of a universal rhythm, from Newton's steady cosmos to Greenwich's ticking towers, has given way to a subtler truth. There is no single tempo of the universe. There are only countless local rhythms, overlapping like waves in a vast sea. And yet, that doesn't make time meaningless. It makes it intimate. It means every clock, every heartbeat, every life is its own small measure of the cosmos. When you glance at a watch, you're not reading a universal truth. You're listening to how the universe feels here, in this small patch of space and gravity. Someone standing on a mountain, or orbiting above the clouds, or drifting near a distant star would be hearing a slightly different rhythm of the same grand song. Perhaps that's why the idea of universal time is both comforting and impossible. It's the promise that we're all moving together, perfectly synchronized. But maybe harmony doesn't come from perfect sameness. Maybe it comes from each of us keeping our own beat and still finding ways to play in tune. As the rails hum beneath an arriving train, as watches tick in unison around the globe, and as the stars slowly wheel overhead, the illusion continues beautifully. A shared rhythm built on countless differences. Time, for all its stubborn relativity, still lets us meet, speak, and share the same moment. And maybe that, in the end, is miracle enough. If you picture the universe as a quiet, star-filled theatre, Einstein didn't come in and shout. He simply adjusted the lights, and suddenly everything looked different. His discovery didn't break Newton's clockwork world so much as reveal that the clock itself was floating. Its gears bending, its rhythm stretching, its hands slowing and quickening depending on where they were. Einstein's idea began not with telescopes or laboratories, but with imagination. He was a young clerk working in a patent office, reading other people's inventions while his own mind wandered elsewhere. He asked himself simple questions that turned out to be impossible ones. What would the world look like if you could ride alongside a beam of light? What would happen if you fell freely, with nothing beneath your feet? Would you still feel gravity tugging at you? He discovered that the answer was no. A person falling inside a sealed elevator with no windows to show motion wouldn't feel gravity at all. They'd float, like an astronaut in orbit. To Einstein, this wasn't just a curious coincidence. It was a key to something profound. Gravity and motion weren't separate forces. They were different ways of experiencing the same geometry. The universe, he realized, wasn't built on invisible pulls and pushes. It was a flexible fabric, and matter was what told that fabric how to curve. The simplest way to imagine it is to picture a large rubber sheet stretched tight. If you set a heavy ball on it, the surface dips. A smaller marble rolled nearby doesn't fall toward the heavy ball because it's being pulled. It follows the curve of the sheet itself. In much the same way, planets orbit stars not because they're being dragged by an invisible rope, but because they're moving along the curved paths created by gravity. Space and time are joined into a single thing, space-time, and mass shapes it, sculpting valleys and ridges that guide everything within. This might sound abstract, but the evidence is all around us. The path of starlight bends as it passes near the sun. The ticking of atomic clocks slows when they are placed in stronger gravity, then speeds up again when lifted higher. Even your body knows this truth. The clock in your head, if it could be measured precisely, would tick ever so slightly faster at the top of your skull than at your feet, simply because the pull of gravity weakens with height. The difference is unimaginably small, less than a trillionth of a second, but it's there, written into reality. Einstein's equations, when translated into everyday language, say something like this. Space tells matter how to move, and matter tells space how to curve. Time is woven through that conversation. It isn't an independent stream anymore, flowing uniformly from past to future. It's a participant, a dimension that flexes depending on the company it keeps. Near something massive, like a star or a black hole, time stretches like soft dough under its own weight. Far away, where gravity thins out, time relaxes and moves more freely. To feel that idea emotionally, imagine standing at the edge of a massive canyon. Down below, in the depths, time runs more slowly. Climb up to the rim, and time quickens. You could lower a clock on a long cable and watch it tick more slowly than yours. Nothing mystical, just geometry. The same thing happens near black holes, though on a scale so extreme that the difference becomes surreal. If you could hover near the event horizon and the point of no return, an outside observer would see your clock nearly stop. You would appear frozen in time, yet for you, inside your little ship, time would feel perfectly ordinary. You'd never know that from the rest of the universe's point of view, you were hanging at the edge of forever. Einstein showed that time doesn't flow at a single rate anywhere. Every observer carries their own clock, and each one is equally valid. There is no master timekeeper watching over the cosmos. That might sound disorienting, but it also carries a quiet kind of beauty, a democracy of moments. No perspective is wrong, each simply reveals its own slice of reality. When physicists first confronted this, some were unsettled. The universe they thought was simple and mechanical now had moods, elasticity, and individuality. Time wasn't the same for all. It depended on where you stood, how fast you moved, how massive the world around you was. But as shocking as it seemed, the theory worked. Predictions matched experiments, from Mercury's orbit to the bending of light seen during solar eclipses. The cosmos, it turned out, was consistent in its strangeness. Einstein's gentle earthquake didn't destroy Newton's world. It completed it. Newton had built a magnificent clock, but he couldn't have known that the clock itself was curved. On a human scale, where speeds are slow and distance is small, the old laws still hold perfectly. You can drop a ball, launch a rocket, or set your alarm. Newton's universe governs them all. But at the edges of the possible, when speeds approach the speed of light or gravity grows fierce, the curvature becomes undeniable. It's humbling to think that the steady tick of a kitchen timer and the dance of distant galaxies are both expressions of the same cosmic conversation, geometry unfolding in silence. And the deeper truth, the one Einstein loved most, is that the laws of physics have no preference for where or when you are. The universe doesn't play favourites. What changes is how you perceive it. That realisation carries a whisper of wonder. If there's no universal now, then perhaps what we call the present isn't something out there waiting to be discovered. It's something we create by observing, by being. Every moment you live is a local agreement between your body, your motion, and the fabric of space itself. You are not merely in time, you are part of its shape. So the next time you feel a second stretch too long, or a day vanish too quickly, imagine Einstein smiling softly somewhere, reminding you that time has always been flexible. It's not a ruler carved into stone. It's more like light seen through water, bending gently, endlessly, around everything that exists. And when you think of that, perhaps you'll hear it, the faint hum of the universe adjusting its rhythm just for you. Try to imagine, if you can, that the universe has texture. Not a solid surface you could touch, but a kind of invisible weave. Soft, flexible, endlessly deep. Every atom, every star, every heartbeat presses gently into that fabric, leaving behind a tiny impression. It's a strange image, but it's close to what Einstein meant when he said space and time are not separate things. Together they form one continuous cloth, space-time. When we talk about time bending, it isn't that clocks stretch or that seconds physically grow longer, it's that the very geometry of reality changes. Where mass gathers, space-time curves inward. Where there's emptiness, it relaxes outward. Everything, light, motion, and thought, moves through this landscape following the softest, most natural paths. We call them straight lines, but in the language of the universe, they're curves drawn into the cosmic fabric. If you've ever seen ripples travel across a pond after a pebble falls in, you already know something about space-time. The ripples carry energy outward, distorting the surface as they go. When two black holes collide, something similar happens on a scale beyond imagination. The collision sends waves through space-time itself, not through space, but of space. Tiny rhythmic shudders that stretch and squeeze everything they pass through. Scientists call them gravitational waves, but the name hardly captures their elegance. They are literally the heartbeat of the cosmos, trembling with each vast event that unfolds. You might wonder how anyone could detect something so subtle. The answer is with quiet patience and unimaginable precision. Instruments like LIGO, a pair of observatories in the United States, use laser beams to watch for changes smaller than the width of a proton. When one of those space-time ripples passes by Earth, the lasers shift ever so slightly, like the pluck of a string too faint for human ears. In 2015, they finally caught one. 2 black holes had merged over 1 billion years ago, and that faint echo had travelled all this way to whisper through our detectors. For the first time, humanity had heard the sound of space-time itself breathing. These discoveries don't just tell us how the universe behaves, they change how we imagine our place within it. Because if space-time can bend, then time, the thing we once thought of as perfectly smooth, can be uneven, warped, and full of nuance. It can stretch near massive stars, twist around spinning black holes, and flow differently for 2 observers standing only a few meters apart. That sounds almost poetic, but it's measurable. Physicists often describe this relationship in simple terms. Energy and mass shape the curvature of space-time, and curvature tells matter how to move. It's a feedback loop that never ends. In the soft language of images, you might say that gravity sculpts the stage, and time is the music that fills it. But there's another side to this story, a subtler one that speaks to our senses. When you watch clouds drifting across the sky, you might feel that time is slipping by gently, like air through fingers. Yet, in Einstein's view, nothing truly flows. The past, present, and future all coexist within the same cosmic structure. What we experience as the passing of time is our consciousness moving along one of the countless threads woven into space-time's fabric. It's as if the universe were an enormous tapestry already woven from beginning to end. Every moment, from the first flicker of starlight to this breath you're taking now, is stitched into that design. But you can only see one small patch at a time, the section your awareness currently rests upon. To you, the picture seems to unfold. In truth, it's all there already. Physicists call this perspective the block universe. Philosophers call it eternalism. But you don't need a label to feel the strange comfort it offers. If every moment exists somewhere in that tapestry, then nothing is truly lost. Every smile, every song, every fleeting instant of wonder still lives within the folds of space-time, preserved in the geometry of reality itself. And yet we don't feel eternal. We feel movement. We feel the rush of things changing, growing older, fading away. Why? The answer may lie in a single word: entropy. It's the measure of disorder, the way systems naturally drift from order into chaos, like a cup of tea cooling or a sandcastle softening into the tide. Entropy gives direction to time. Without it, all moments would seem the same, and the world would have no arrow pointing from past to future. Imagine shuffling a deck of cards. Once it's arranged, you can reverse every motion and return it to order. But once you've mixed it well, you can't simply unshuffle it by chance. That difference, between what can happen easily and what can't, is what we call the arrow of time. The universe began in a state of astonishing order, a hot, dense simplicity from which all structure has since blossomed. The growth of entropy since that moment is what makes time feel like a river flowing forward. It's not the clocks or the calendars that move, it's the spreading of disorder, the blooming of complexity. In this way, time and entropy are partners. One gives shape to the other. The flow we feel, the sense of before and after, might simply be our awareness tracking the growth of complexity around us. When you remember something, you're recalling a configuration of the universe that had lower entropy. When you imagine the future, you're anticipating a state with higher entropy. Your mind, in its quiet way, is a mirror of cosmic thermodynamics. That may sound abstract, but it touches something deeply human. Every photograph, every memory, every scar or wrinkle is a record of entropy increasing. The universe writing its own story, one irreversible moment at a time. The reason we can't travel backward isn't because of a rule forbidding it. It's because we are made of matter that remembers only one direction. The atoms in your body are time's instruments. They record the past and hum softly toward the future. So when Einstein said that time and space are interwoven, he gave us more than a new model of gravity. He gave us a way to see ourselves as part of the universe's texture. We are the ripples and the curvatures, the soft vibrations and the irreversible bloom of order turning into chaos. If you ever find yourself lying beneath the night sky, watching the stars wheel silently overhead, remember that what you're really seeing is geometry in motion, not separate from you, but including you. The same fabric that carries starlight carries the beat of your heart, the rhythm of your breath, the faint pulse of your thoughts. You're not a spectator standing outside the cosmic flow, you're a fold within it, moving and being moved. And in that realization, time becomes less a prison and more a poem. Not a countdown, but a choreography. You can almost hear it now, the quiet rhythm of space-time unfolding. Not ticking, not rushing, just existing. One endless, woven breath. Picture a river. From where you stand on the bank, the water seems to move. Smooth, shimmering, always slipping forward. You can point to a wave and say, "That's now." A moment later it's gone, replaced by another. But if you could step above the river, high enough to see from source to sea, you'd notice that all of it, every twist, every calm pool, every rapid, exists at once. The flow is only an illusion of your vantage point. Einstein's equations whispered something similar about the cosmos. They implied that the universe doesn't unfold in time the way we think it does. Instead, time is a dimension, much like space. Past, present, and future are all woven together in a single, unchanging structure, the block universe. Nothing in that block moves. The stars that died billions of years ago and the stars not yet born are both part of the same eternal tapestry. We only experience the universe slice by slice, as our consciousness drifts through one thin sheet of it we call now. To us it feels like progress, the seconds piling up like falling snow. But in the mathematics of relativity, there is no master clock counting those seconds. There is only geometry, a landscape of events stretching across 4 dimensions. Each event is fixed, like a coordinate written into the fabric of space-time. The meeting of 2 lovers, the collapse of a star, the slow turning of a leaf in autumn. All of these are points in that map. The river of time does not flow, it simply is. This idea unsettles many people. It feels like it takes away something intimate, the sense of freedom, of choosing, of becoming. If the future already exists, then are we merely walking a pre-written path? But the block universe doesn't erase agency. It redefines it. Our choices, our movements, our thoughts are part of the structure too. They're not imposed from outside. They are curves within the geometry itself. You're not an actor on a stage. You're one of the lines in the script that gives the story shape. It's helpful to think of a film reel. The entire movie already exists, every frame captured, every scene printed. Yet when the film runs through the projector, we see motion, emotion, suspense. The story feels alive because our mind strings the still images into continuity. We live the film as a flow, even though the film itself never changes. The block universe is like that. A reel already written from beginning to end, projected by the light of consciousness. This might sound fatalistic, but it can also be strangely comforting. If all moments coexist, then nothing truly vanishes. The laughter of a friend long gone, the glow of a childhood sunrise, the first spark of life on some distant planet. All are preserved within the structure of space-time. They don't fade away, we simply move past them. The universe doesn't delete, it remembers perfectly. And perhaps that's what gives rise to nostalgia, that deep, aching feeling when you recall a moment and wish to step back into it. On some level, you're sensing the truth that the moment still exists somewhere in the vast geometry of being. You just can't visit it again, because your consciousness is travelling forward along its own world line. The personal path you trace through space-time, each person, each object, has one. The physics doesn't let us turn around, but it tells us the path is real, etched forever into the cosmic fabric. The arrow that keeps us moving one way through this block is entropy, that quiet increase in disorder that gives direction to existence. You might think of entropy as the trail of breadcrumbs the universe leaves behind to mark its progress. It's what allows you to remember yesterday, but not tomorrow. In a sense, memory is the local footprint of entropy rising. The past feels fixed because it's the part of the structure already filled with those footprints. The future feels open because it's the part where those traces haven't yet been written. But the deeper truth is that both exist already, waiting for our awareness to touch them. We, like travellers on a train, only see what's outside our window. The track behind us remains, the track ahead awaits, but we can't lean out far enough to grasp them both. Our perception, not physics, is what makes time feel alive. There's a tenderness in that realization. It means that even though the future may already exist, we are still the means by which it becomes visible. Each choice, each act of noticing, is a light turning on inside that vast structure. The block universe may be eternal, but it's incomplete without consciousness to illuminate its details. Without observers, it's like an unprojected film, silent, beautiful, and unseen. When you look up at the night sky, you're gazing into this paradox made visible. The light from a distant star may have begun its journey before humans even existed, yet, when that light reaches your eyes, it becomes part of your present. You're experiencing a moment billions of years old as something happening now. The distinction between past and present melts away in the starlight. Everything, every time, converges in your awareness. It's easy to think of that as a cold, abstract notion, but there's poetry hidden in it. The block universe doesn't deny emotion, it contains it. Each feeling, each heartbeat, is one of its coordinates. The grief you feel today, the joy you felt yesterday, the love you'll feel tomorrow, they're all pages already written into existence. The story of your life isn't a line being drawn, it's a painting already completed. And every brushstroke matters, because each contributes to the picture of what the universe is. Still, there's a mystery that equations can't touch. Why do we experience time as a flow at all? Why not see all of it at once? Some physicists suggest it's because our brains are built to process change sequentially. We evolved to sense motion, not stasis. The mind, with its limited memory and focus, scans through the universe like a flashlight beam, narrow, moving forward, lighting one moment at a time. The result is the feeling of passing through time, when in truth we're passing through ourselves. So maybe time doesn't need to move for us to live in it. Maybe what we call the present is simply the place where perception meets geometry, where the eternal becomes experienced. The river never really flows, but we do, carving our awareness through its still water. And if you listen closely enough, to the hum of a clock, to the breath that fills your lungs, to the slow turning of earth beneath you, you might catch a glimpse of that stillness behind the motion. A universe not racing ahead, but simply being. A river that has already reached the sea even as we stand upon its shore, feeling the illusion of movement in our own reflection. If the universe keeps its own quiet geometry of time, then the brain is the little storyteller that turns that geometry into a song. Inside your skull, there isn't one single clock marking each second like the gears of a watch. There are hundreds of tiny rhythms woven together, cells that fire in patterns, chemical pulses that rise and fall, heartbeats and breaths that the mind weaves into the feeling we call now. You've felt these inner clocks before, though you might not have noticed. When you're running late and your pulse is high, seconds shrink and vanish. When you wait for news that matters, those same seconds stretch unbearably long. Objectively, nothing changes, but your body's chemistry does. The brain uses small bursts of a neurotransmitter called dopamine to track anticipation and reward. When dopamine flows freely, time feels quick. When it drips slowly, each moment lingers. That's why happiness and fear can twist the clock in opposite directions. One rushes the seconds past, the other holds them hostage. Neuroscientists sometimes describe the brain's timekeeping as an orchestra rather than a metronome. Different sections play at different speeds. Visual processing runs faster than hearing. Hearing runs faster than touch. Every sense experiences the world with its own delay, measured in thousandths of a second. Yet the mind somehow gathers these scattered signals and fuses them into a single, smooth present. It's a remarkable trick, a kind of mental editing that ensures your life feels continuous instead of disjointed. But that editing takes time. When you see lightning and hear thunder, you know they happen together, yet the sounds and images reach you at different moments. Your brain quietly waits, just long enough to combine them into one event. That delay, tiny but constant, means the present you experience is already a memory. You're always living about 1/10 of a second in the past, watching reality's playback slightly behind schedule. You might think the difference is too small to matter, but it's what allows reality to make sense. Without that delay, every sense would compete for attention like an uncoordinated choir. Instead, the mind smooths them into harmony. The neuroscientist David Eagleman once compared this to a conductor who lets the slowest instruments catch up so the entire orchestra can stay in tune. We call that harmony the present moment, though technically it's always already gone. Sometimes the brain's clockwork slips. Under extreme stress, for example, people often describe time as slowing down. A car crash that feels like it lasts forever, a fall that seems stretched into eternity. Researchers have studied this illusion and found that it isn't the world that slows, but the mind that speeds up its recording rate, taking in more snapshots per second. Later, when you recall the event, you have so many extra frames of memory that the experience seems longer than it was. Your internal camera simply switched to slow motion. The opposite can happen too. When you enter what psychologists call a flow state, painting, playing music, coding, running, your brain's chatter fades. The sense of time melts away. Minutes or hours can vanish in what feels like a breath. The conductor steps off the podium, and the orchestra plays freely. You're no longer measuring moments, you're inhabiting them. This elasticity of perception hints at something profound. Our feeling of time isn't anchored to the universe's clock at all. It's self-made, a construct built from sensory inputs and emotional context. The same physics applies to everyone, but each mind translates it differently. That's why a child's summer feels endless while an adult's year disappears in a blink. As we age, the brain lays down fewer novel memories, and time seems to accelerate because our mental record grows sparse. We measure time not by minutes, but by changes, and when change slows, so does our sense of life's depth. Inside the brain, these measurements happen through small bursts of rhythmic electrical activity, tiny pulses that link memory and expectation. Some occur in waves lasting a fraction of a second, others stretch over many seconds or minutes. Together they create a nested rhythm, like the turning of gears within gears. It's delicate enough that even small shifts in brain chemistry can make you lose track of time altogether. Jet lag, fatigue, anxiety, each is a temporary warping of the mind's internal space-time. There are even moments when the illusion falters completely. Patients with certain neurological disorders report a world that stutters or loops, where time seems broken. People with Parkinson's disease, for example, often struggle to estimate intervals correctly. Their internal pulse has lost its beat. Those with schizophrenia sometimes describe time collapsing, expanding, or moving out of order. To them, the universe feels less like a flow and more like a puzzle of disconnected pieces. These are not failures of physics, but of perception. Reminders that our sense of time depends on the fragile synchrony of neurons. And yet, That fragility is what makes human experience so beautifully varied. Our brains turn physics into poetry. They take the still geometry of Einstein's block universe and translate it into melody, movement, and story. Each of us becomes a narrator of change, giving the illusion of flow to something that might, at its deepest level, be perfectly still. When you dream, this translation grows even stranger. In dreams, seconds can bloom into hours, or whole lifetimes can pass between blinks. The neural circuits that mark real-world time are quieter then, allowing imagination to stretch and compress moments without restraint. That's why a dream can feel as long as a novel and still fit into a brief flicker of REM sleep. The brain isn't bound by clocks, it's bound by experience. If time outside is shaped by gravity and motion, then time inside is shaped by emotion and attention. Both obey their own forms of relativity. To the universe, a second is a second. To you, it's whatever you feel it to be. The space between two heartbeats can last an eternity in fear or vanish in an instant of joy. The laws of physics describe the structure. Consciousness supplies the rhythm. It's humbling, really, to realize that every moment you've ever lived was stitched together by your brain in retrospect. And yet it all feels immediate, fresh, alive. We may never know what now truly is, but we can feel it. A delicate creation unfolding from within, made new each heartbeat. So the next time you close your eyes and take a slow breath, notice how your body marks time in its own quiet language. The rise and fall of your chest, the faint pulse in your wrist, the soft rhythm of thought drifting between inhale and exhale. That's your personal universe spinning its own web of space-time. One heartbeat, one breath, one gentle illusion at a time. There are moments when the clock in the brain stumbles, when the invisible gears that keep your inner rhythm misalign and the smooth fabric of time begins to ripple. It doesn't take a major illness for that to happen. Sometimes it's as simple as jet lag, sleeplessness, or heartbreak. But in more profound cases, the disruption can fracture reality itself. When neurologists study the perception of time, they often turn to the rare cases where that perception fails. One of the most haunting examples is a disorder called temporal disintegration, a poetic name for a devastating experience. Patients describe it as though life no longer unfolds in a line. Events arrive out of sequence, emotions and sensations lose their anchors, and cause and effect blur together. A sound might come before its source. A thought might seem to echo before it's spoken. The brain, unable to synchronize its signals, lets the world unravel. In Parkinson's disease, the chemical messenger dopamine, the same one that shapes our anticipation and sense of reward, fades away. Without it, the brain's pacing falters. People begin to move slowly, speak slowly, and perceive slowly. Their internal clocks run too soft, too quiet. Time to them feels viscous, dragging. Seconds that once glided now stick like honey. The same loss of dopamine that stiffens muscles also stiffens moments. In schizophrenia, the opposite distortion can happen. The neural signals that sequence perception, the tiny markers that say this happened before that, lose coordination. The result is a world where meaning fractures. Someone might feel that thoughts are arriving from outside themselves, or that the future is leaking into the present. To the rest of us, it sounds like delusion, but inside that mind, it's simply that time has lost its direction. The order of things, so obvious to us, has been scrambled by noise in the neural code. Even healthy brains can taste this disorientation under certain conditions. Sleep deprivation, for instance, makes seconds pulse unevenly. You might stare at a clock and swear the second hand has paused, only for it to lurch forward suddenly. It's called the chronostasis illusion. Your brain, catching up after a blink, fills in missing information with a frozen frame, tricking you into thinking time itself hesitated. The same mechanism explains why time sometimes seems to stop during moments of awe. Your brain, overwhelmed, misses a few beats, then races to catch up. The gap feels infinite. It's strange to think that such fragile chemistry defines the tempo of our lives. When the brain's rhythm shifts, the world itself seems to change speed. In anxiety, the body's alarm system floods you with adrenaline. Your heart races, senses sharpen, and the world seems to slow. In depression, the opposite happens. The mind drifts in slow motion, thoughts stretching and looping, days feeling indistinguishable. Time bends to mood. Physics may not care, but consciousness does. Cultures too have learned to sculpt time in their own ways. In the West, we often imagine time as an arrow, a straight path from birth to death, progress to progress. We speak of losing time, saving time, wasting time, as if it were a currency slipping through our fingers. But many indigenous cultures see it differently. Among the Amandawa people of the Amazon, there is no abstract word for time. They measure life by natural cycles, the arrival of rain, the ripening of fruit, the return of a bird's call. Seasons mark their moments, not numbers. To them, time isn't a thing that passes, it's a relationship that changes. In parts of Asia, time is thought of as circular. In Hindu and Buddhist traditions, the universe itself is a wheel, creation, destruction and rebirth repeating forever. The past and future are not endpoints but directions along a cycle. In that worldview, to live in the present is not an escape from the future, but an alignment with the rhythm of everything. You're simply turning with the wheel, not against it. Western science, for all its precision, sometimes forgets this softness. We build clocks so accurate they can detect the stretching of seconds in gravity's grip. Yet we still let our days slip by as though chasing a finish line. But biology reminds us that time is personal. Each heartbeat, each breath, each moment of attention creates its own small universe of duration. That's why meditation, the practice of simply noticing, can feel like a return to something ancient. It slows the chatter of the inner clocks until you can hear the quiet between the ticks. Modern psychologists have begun to rediscover what ancient cultures always knew, that our perception of time is deeply connected to our well-being. When people feel rushed and fragmented, they report higher stress and less happiness. When they engage fully, cooking, gardening, listening, they report that time feels both slower and fuller. The difference isn't in the hours, it's in the mind that experiences them. Perhaps the most mysterious state of all is déjà vu, that uncanny sense of reliving the present. Some scientists believe it's a tiny glitch in memory. The brain briefly misfiles a new experience as a familiar one. Others think it's a byproduct of how the hippocampus, the brain's timekeeper for events, momentarily loops its signal. Either way, it's a reminder that time is not an external river, but an internal rhythm. Sometimes, that rhythm skips a beat, and for a second we fall out of step with reality. Even at its strangest, these breakdowns tell us something beautiful. They reveal that the experience of time is not dictated by the universe, but composed by the mind. Each of us writes our own tempo into the cosmic score. The seconds we share are only half the story. The rest is interpretation, the personal translation of motion into meaning. So when you next find yourself feeling that the world is moving too fast or too slow, remember that time hasn't changed its pace. You have. Your internal conductor is adjusting the score. Sometimes the orchestra plays allegro, sometimes adagio, and sometimes it simply rests between notes. Perhaps that's what it means to be human, to live suspended between the physical time of the cosmos and the emotional time of the self, translating one into the other with each breath. The breakdowns remind us how precious that translation is. Without it, seconds would be meaningless, events just a blur. With it, we create narrative, memory, and hope. Time inside the mind is fragile, elastic, and alive. It breaks and heals, stretches and compresses, reflects our fears and our calm, and somehow, amid all its distortions, it keeps us connected to each other, to nature, to the rhythm of being alive. So breathe, slowly. Feel the pulse behind your wrist. That rhythm belongs to you, but it's also part of something much larger, a shared heartbeat echoing through billions of minds, each keeping its own version of time, all playing together in a harmony the universe can almost hear. Imagine rewinding everything you know, the trees, the oceans, the stars, all shrinking backward in time. Galaxies pull closer, atoms press tighter, until the sky itself folds into a single point of unbearable brightness. Keep going, past the moment when the Earth was molten, past the birth of the sun, past even the first galaxies. Keep winding until there's nowhere left to go. Somewhere in that unreachable instant, time itself falters. We call it the Big Bang, but the name is misleading. It wasn't an explosion in space. It was the creation of space and of time. When physicists talk about the beginning, they speak carefully, because at that moment, the very concept of before loses meaning. You can't ask what happened before time existed any more than you can step north of the North Pole. Time didn't flow. It appeared the way ripples appear when you drop a stone into still water. At the start, there wasn't even light, only an unimaginably dense, hot soup of energy and particles colliding too fiercely to form stable matter. The universe was opaque, glowing like the heart of a star, its contents locked in a blinding dance of creation and annihilation. For about the first few 100,000 years, no clock could have ticked. Every atom was torn apart by heat, every photon of light trapped in an endless pinball game, bouncing off charged particles without rest. In that chaos, you couldn't define a second. There was no steady process, no repeating motion to measure against. It was, in the most literal sense, a universe without tick or tock, only change, without rhythm. As the cosmos expanded, it began to cool, and the great fog started to thin. When the temperature dropped low enough for electrons to settle into orbits around nuclei, light could finally travel freely. Astronomers call this moment recombination, though the name feels too tidy for something so cosmic. The photons released then are still travelling today, stretched by billions of years of expansion into faint microwaves. If you've ever tuned an old television to static, a few of those flickering dots are ancient light from that first moment of freedom, the afterglow of creation itself. You could say that was the birth of time as we understand it, the moment the universe acquired texture. Only when light could move and matter could form did the idea of before and after start to make sense. With photons in flight and atoms stable, the universe had its first reliable heartbeat. Entropy, the tendency toward disorder, began its long climb, and with it came the arrow of time pointing gently forward. But even that moment wasn't perfectly smooth. If you could magnify space-time down to its smallest imaginable scale, you wouldn't find a calm surface, you'd find something restless, a quantum foam bubbling with possibilities. Space and time at that depth are thought to shimmer with uncertainty. Particles appear and vanish faster than thought, and distances flicker between existence and absence. Physicists picture it as a seething ocean of tiny fluctuations, the universe trying out every possible configuration before settling on one. Some describe this deep structure with an idea called causal sets, a vision of the cosmos not as a continuous fabric, but as a network of discrete moments, each linked to the next like beads on an invisible thread. In that view, space-time isn't a smooth cloth but a mosaic, built from the smallest possible tiles of experience. Time doesn't flow through them, it emerges from their connections, the way melody emerges from notes played one after another. It's a strange and beautiful thought, that time might not be a fundamental ingredient of reality, but a side effect of relationships, of things happening relative to one another. In that sense, time is like language, meaningless without context, yet powerful once pattern arises. The universe, in its infancy, may have spoken its first word when matter and energy learned to dance together. Even now, that primal uncertainty hasn't vanished. It's woven into everything, from the flicker of atoms to the spark of neurons. Quantum mechanics tells us that the smaller the scale we look at, the less definite time becomes. Events blur. One can no longer say precisely when something happens, only how likely it is to occur within a given interval. Time at that level behaves like light through a mist, not a clear line, but a soft glow of probability. You might wonder how this fits with the immense order we see today. Galaxies, planets, life, all following steady rhythms. In a way, order was born out of that first chaos. As the universe expanded and cooled, fluctuations in that quantum foam were stretched to cosmic size. Tiny wrinkles became seeds for galaxies. The stars we see now are echoes of quantum jitters older than time itself. The cosmos we live in is, quite literally, a magnified memory of those first uncertain moments. And still, there is mystery. Even the best theories stumble when asked to describe the instant of the Big Bang itself. The equations we use to describe gravity and those we use to describe quantum mechanics don't yet fit together. One points to infinite density, the other insists such a thing can't exist. The truth may lie in a deeper theory, one where space, time and matter arise from something simpler, something beyond measurement. But perhaps it's enough to accept that the first second wasn't really a second at all. It was a threshold, a crossing from timelessness into rhythm, from pure potential into unfolding story. In that sense, the universe itself experienced something like birth, an expansion from silence into song. If you could have stood there, though there was no there to stand, you wouldn't have seen a blast or heard a bang. You would have felt an infinite stillness giving way to motion, a blinding brightness beginning to soften, and then slowly the first whisper of structure. Time began not with a noise but with a pulse, the faintest tremor of change in a universe that, for the first time, could remember that it had changed. And in a way, that same pulse still runs through you. The atoms in your body were forged in stars that were shaped by those early ripples. The rhythm of your heartbeat is a distant descendant of the universe's first expansion. You carry the echo of that first second that wasn't, the moment when existence learned to keep time. If the beginning of the universe was a kind of awakening, then what came next was the long, slow dream of physics trying to understand itself. The farther we peer into the quantum world, the more time seems to lose its outline. Down there, beneath atoms and particles, the universe no longer obeys the tidy rhythm of seconds. It flickers, it hesitates. Sometimes it even seems to forget what came first. Imagine two events, a spark and a shadow. In the everyday world, you'd say the spark caused the shadow, not the other way around. But in the quantum realm, those roles can blur. Experiments with light have shown that a single photon, one tiny particle of light, can behave as if it has already seen its own future. In a famous setup, scientists let a photon pass through a pair of paths that later recombine. When they measure it at the end, the photon's earlier behaviour changes depending on what happens afterward. It's as though the act of looking rewrites the timeline, letting cause and effect trade, places for a heartbeat. At that scale, time isn't a river flowing one way. It's more like a shimmering puddle, where ripples spread in every direction at once. Physicists call this quantum superposition, the idea that something can exist in multiple possibilities simultaneously. A particle doesn't choose its state until interaction or observation freezes it into one outcome. To describe that process mathematically, they use what's called a wave function, though you can think of this more simply as a cloud of maybes. Each time we observe something, the cloud condenses into a single droplet of reality. And in that condensation, time seems to solidify too. before the droplet forms, before and after don't yet exist. That's why some researchers suggest that time itself might emerge from relationships, not from any cosmic clock. One elegant idea, proposed by physicists Don Page and William Wouters, imagines the universe as fundamentally timeless. In their view, the cosmos is like an orchestra with no external conductor. Instead, every instrument, every particle and wave keeps rhythm by listening to all the others. There's no absolute beat, but together they create the illusion of tempo. Time, then, is what we perceive when we notice one system changing in relation to another. Without relationship, there's no motion, and without motion, no time. This may sound abstract, but think of it like this. If you were floating alone in endless darkness, with nothing around you changing, how would you know a second had passed? You wouldn't. You might exist, but without comparison, without any change, and time would have no meaning. The Page-Wouters idea simply extends that intuition to the entire universe. The cosmos doesn't need a ticking metronome outside itself. It carries its own rhythm, born of connection. That concept appears again in a famous equation from the 1960s, the Wheeler-DeWitt equation, which attempts to unite quantum mechanics and general relativity. When written out, it contains no symbol for time at all. The universe, according to that description, just is. All possible states coexist in a kind of eternal quantum haze. Time, as we experience it, might be nothing more than our way of tracing a path through that haze, a way of remembering where the music seemed to start. Some scientists picture this underlying state as a shimmering foam of probabilities, bubbling with virtual particles that pop in and out of existence faster than we can imagine. In that froth, events don't unfold sequentially. They appear and dissolve like thoughts in a half-formed dream. Only when you zoom out, when you look at many such events together, does a sense of order begin to appear, the way a million raindrops can seem like a smooth fall of water. Our reality, then, could be the large-scale averaging of countless micro-instants of timelessness. It's almost poetic. Time as the child of chaos, born from the crowd rather than the individual. The larger the system, the clearer the direction becomes. Entropy, that slow rise of disorder, might be the collective whisper that organises this chorus of fluctuations. On the smallest scales, entropy is meaningless, because nothing lasts long enough to decay. On the cosmic scale, it's everything. The slow drift that turns possibility into memory. Even the act of observing seems to weave time together. When you look at something, you set a boundary. This is the observer, that is the observed. In the process, you collapse the maybes into a single is. In a very quiet way, awareness gives time a direction. That doesn't mean consciousness creates the universe, but it does mean the two may be intertwined. After all, both rely on change, on the recognition of difference. Without contrast, there's no experience. Without experience, perhaps no time. You can feel a trace of this quantum strangeness in daily life. Think of those moments that seem to hang between seconds. The pause before someone speaks your name. The stillness between lightning and thunder. The breath you take before a leap. In that brief suspension, you're not in the past or the future. You're inside something unmeasured, a kind of timeless pocket the brain can't quite name. Maybe that's the closest we come to sensing the quantum flutter beneath our world, those hidden spaces where time hasn't yet chosen a direction. If the universe began as such a shimmer, then everything since, galaxies, stars, you listening now, is the long unfolding of that initial uncertainty. What began as a blur of possibilities became the story of existence, one observation at a time. Each measurement, each interaction is a note struck in a symphony that once had no beginning or end. It's humbling to think that even now, billions of years after that first tremor of expansion, we're still surrounded by uncertainty. The particles that form our bodies hum with it. The photons entering your eyes were once waves of probability. Reality, it seems, is not a solid floor, but a dance that never stops balancing between what might be and what is. Maybe that's why silence feels so profound. When everything stills, when we stop counting and naming, we catch a faint glimpse of what the universe might have felt before the first moment. A state not of nothingness, but of pure potential. A poised breath before the first exhale. And so perhaps time begins not with the universe, but with awareness itself. Every time something notices something else, an atom interacting with a photon, a mind recognizing a thought, the clock starts again. Each connection is a birth of time, a local dawn within the vast timeless sea. As you sit here, listening to these words, that same process unfolds. The sound waves reach your ears, your neurons respond, and a new sequence of events takes shape inside you. Another little pocket of now comes into being. The cosmos, through you, remembers itself. If you've ever looked out the window of an airplane and watched the world slide slowly beneath you, you've already glimpsed the faintest whisper of time travel. It's not the kind of journey that requires glowing portals or silver machines, but something far subtler, a trick written into the structure of space-time itself. Every time we move, every time gravity tugs at us, we change our pace through time. Einstein once said that for a traveller moving at great speed, time would pass differently than for someone at rest. It sounds like a riddle, but it's one of the simplest truths of relativity. The faster you move through space, the slower you move through time. Think of your life as a kind of budget. You have a total allowance of motion through space-time, and you can spend it in two ways. You can spend it on movement through space, or on movement through time. The more you use for one, the less you have left for the other. Here on Earth, where speeds are gentle compared to light, we barely notice. But for those who fly higher or faster, the difference becomes measurable. Astronauts aboard the International Space Station orbit Earth at more than 27,000 kilometers per hour. Up there, far above the densest pull of gravity, their clocks run a little faster than ours. Yet their high speed slows them down too. When you combine both effects, time for them passes just a tiny bit slower than for people on the ground. By the time they return, they've aged a few milliseconds less. They have, in the quietest way imaginable, travelled into the future. This isn't science fiction. It's been measured again and again. Atomic clocks flown on jets or placed atop mountains tick at slightly different rates, depending on altitude and motion. The difference is minute but real, and we rely on it every day. Without accounting for these effects, the GPS in your phone would drift by kilometres within hours. Each satellite circling above Earth lives in a subtly different time zone of its own making. Engineers continuously adjust their signals so that all those tiny universes of time agree long enough to tell you where you are. It's humbling to realise that we're surrounded by small examples of time travel. Even the simple act of standing on a chair lifts you a little farther from Earth's core, where gravity is weaker and your clock runs a billionth of a second faster. When you go to sleep, your heart slows and your metabolism shifts. Your inner rhythms slip slightly out of sync with the world's. Every living being, every moving thing, is travelling through time at its own pace. The idea of moving forward faster, of leaping into the future, simply pushes this everyday truth to its extreme. If you could accelerate close to the speed of light, time around you would stretch. Minutes for you might be years for those you leave behind. To them, your clock would appear almost frozen. To you, theirs would race ahead. In a single voyage, you could witness centuries unfold, civilizations rise and fall, but for you, only a heartbeat would pass. This thought experiment is often called the twin paradox. Imagine two twins. One stays on Earth while the other sets out on a high-speed journey through space. When the traveller returns, they find their sibling older, perhaps by decades. The traveller has leapt forward in time, not by choice, but by geometry. The same space-time that curves around stars and planets also curves around motion itself. The twins' path through the cosmos was simply shorter through time than through space. It's easy to get lost in the technical details, but the feeling of it is almost lyrical. Time, it seems, is a fabric that yields to motion and gravity, stretching and tightening like cloth in the wind. The faster you move, the more that fabric resists your progress through its folds. The stronger the gravity, the deeper you sink into its weave. You can't escape the flow entirely, but you can tilt it, bend it, and stretch it, the way a swimmer slips through different currents in the same ocean. Some scientists have wondered what it would be like to approach the edge of a black hole, where gravity is so strong that time slows to a crawl. For an observer far away, anything falling toward the horizon seems to freeze, moving ever slower until it stops altogether. Yet for the falling traveller, time continues normally. They would cross the horizon unaware of how the rest of the universe sees them, trapped, suspended, half forgotten. In theory, if they could return, they would find that countless ages had passed. But the black hole, being what it is, allows no return. It is a one-way trip into the future, sealed by gravity's silence. In the grand scheme, all of us are on a similar voyage, just at a gentler speed. The Earth carries us through space at 30 kilometers per second. Our solar system drifts around the galaxy. Our galaxy sails through the cosmic web. And as the universe expands, the fabric of space-time itself stretches, carrying every star and every atom forward. We're all passengers on a vessel that never stops moving. Time travel, in that sense, isn't something we do, it's something we are. But there's a limit to how far forward we can leap. To move faster through space, we need more energy, and the closer we get to the speed of light, the more the universe resists. It's as though light marks the ultimate tempo, the fastest possible rhythm in the cosmic song. You can dance faster and faster, but never outrun the music. And yet, even within that boundary, there's beauty. Knowing that time is flexible reminds us that it's also fragile. Our seconds are not universal. They're local, personal, shaped by the curve of our world and the pace of our hearts. The clock above a mountaintop ticks differently than the one in your kitchen, but both are right in their own small domains. Time doesn't belong to the cosmos alone. It belongs to each of us, wherever we stand. So when you gaze at the night sky, you are, in a quiet way, seeing into the past. Starlight that began its journey long before humans existed, now arriving at your eyes, and you, in turn, are already moving into someone else's distant future. Time travel is not waiting for invention. It's happening with every breath, every rotation of the Earth, every step you take. Perhaps the real miracle isn't that time can stretch or slow, but that we can sense it at all. That we can look up, see the light of ancient suns, and know that their story still touches ours. Forward. Always forward. That's the only direction life knows. And somehow, within that endless motion, we find meaning. If travelling into the future is as natural as breathing, the dream of going backward is our act of rebellion. It's the most human wish of all, to revisit what we've lost, to change what we regret, to touch something that no longer exists. We've written countless stories about it. Spinning clocks, swirling lights, and doors that open into yesterday. Yet, for all our imagination, the laws of the universe remain quietly stubborn. They seem to whisper, forward only. Still, physicists have tried to listen for loopholes. If time can bend, they reasoned, perhaps it can loop. Maybe, under the right conditions, space-time could curve back onto itself, a path where tomorrow connects to yesterday like the ends of a circle. They even gave such paths a name, closed time-like curves. They exist as solutions to Einstein's equations, not fantasies, at least on paper. One early explorer of that idea was a mathematician named Frank Tipler. In the 1970s, he imagined an enormous cylinder, spinning at almost the speed of light. If the cylinder were long enough and its rotation powerful enough, he calculated, space-time around it might twist into a spiral. Travel near the edge of that whirlpool and you could, in theory, return to a moment before you left. The design became famous as the Tipler cylinder. The problem, of course, is scale. To create such an object, you'd need more material than exists in the observable universe, and the rotation would tear it apart before it ever reached the required speed. It was a brilliant mathematical dream, but the kind of dream that burns away when touched by reality. Then came the idea of wormholes, tunnels that might connect distant parts of space-time. They appear naturally in Einstein's equations too, like shortcuts through the fabric of reality. If one mouth of a wormhole were kept stationary and the other accelerated close to the speed of light, time inside them would fall out of sync. In principle, you could step through one side and emerge in your own past. It's the most elegant version of time travel ever proposed, and also the most fragile. To keep a wormhole open, you'd need a substance called negative energy, something that pushes space apart rather than pulling it together. We've seen tiny hints of such energy in the quantum world. The Casimir effect, where two metal plates in a vacuum feel a faint attraction due to fluctuations of empty space. But the amount required to stabilize a wormhole would be immense, like trying to hold a mountain open with a breath of air. Without it, the tunnel would collapse faster than light could enter. The doorway to the past would close before even a memory could step through. Stephen Hawking once offered a quiet solution to this paradox. He called it the chronology protection conjecture, a phrase that sounds grand but carries a simple idea. The universe protects its own history. In other words, nature has built-in safety guards that prevent paradoxes before they can happen. If you tried to build a time machine, quantum effects might rise up to destroy it, as if the fabric of reality refused to fold that way. Hawking joked that this is why we never meet time travelers from the future, not because they don't exist, but because the universe politely keeps them out. And yet, the question lingers. What if, by some unknown means, one could slip through that barrier? What would happen to cause and effect? Physicists have debated this through thought experiments like the grandfather paradox. If you went back in time and changed something crucial, say preventing your own birth, who would be doing the preventing? Some propose that paradoxes resolve themselves through consistency. Whatever can happen in the past must fit what already has. If you travel backward, you wouldn't be able to change events, only fulfill them. You'd become part of the story that was already written. Others imagine a multiverse, a branching of timelines where each choice spawns a new thread. In that picture, going back doesn't rewrite your past. It creates another version of it, leaving your original untouched. It's comforting to think the universe might be generous enough to allow such complexity, even if we can never test it. Still, there's something haunting about all these ideas. Even when physics bends over backward to allow the past, it does so only as a possibility, never a promise. The deeper truth seems to be that time resists symmetry. The arrow that entropy draws, yes, from order to disorder, from memory to forgetfulness, doesn't reverse. No one has ever seen broken glass leap together, or smoke return to a candle. The universe remembers the direction of its own story, and it keeps moving forward with quiet determination. But perhaps time travel, as we imagine it, is more of an emotion than a technology. Memory itself is a form of backward travel, the mind replaying light and sound that no longer exist. Nostalgia, that sweet ache of wanting to return, is our internal wormhole. Every photograph, every old song, every scent that pulls you somewhere else, these are our soft ways of folding space-time, not with machines, but with feeling. There's an old thought experiment that says if we could somehow recreate every atom in a vanished moment, align them exactly as they were, we could in principle bring that moment back. But what we'd really be doing is making a perfect copy, not recovering the original. The past is defined not just by arrangement, but by the fact that it's already happened. It's the difference between repeating a note and hearing its echo. One is present, the other is memory. Maybe that's why time protects itself, as Hawking suggested. not out of hostility, but out of mercy. A story cannot be relived without losing what made it meaningful. The distance between then and now gives our lives their texture, their music. If we could rewrite the score endlessly, we might never learn to listen. And so, the dream of going back remains what it has always been, a beautiful impossibility. The door to the past is closed not with locks, but with understanding. Each moment, once lived, folds quietly into the structure of the universe, preserved but unreachable. We can look, we can remember, but we cannot return. Still, there's a tenderness in knowing that the past isn't destroyed. It's part of the block universe, one of the infinite coordinates still shining softly in space-time. When you remember, you're not breaking the rules. You're touching one of those coordinates from afar, letting awareness bridge what motion cannot. So maybe time travel does exist, not in metal or mathematics, but in memory and love. Every time you recall a lost voice or an old day, every time you forgive something that can't be changed, you're bending time in the only way the universe allows, gently, inward, toward understanding. And maybe that's enough. Because even if we can't walk back into yesterday, we can carry its light forward. In a quiet room filled with the faint hum of servers, you can hear it, the mechanical heartbeat of memory. Each pulse is a moment being copied, stored, preserved. A photograph, a message, a recording of a voice that might have vanished years ago. In a sense, we have already built our first time machines, not the kind that move bodies through space, but the kind that move information, the echoes of lives, across years and generations. It began with simple marks on clay tablets, scratches on bone, and ink on paper. Those were our earliest attempts to capture moments before they dissolved. Then came film, magnetic tape, digital drives, and now clouds of invisible storage drifting through the internet's vastness. Every new technology of memory extends our reach further backward. A child today can see their grandparents' wedding, hear their laughter, watch them dance, all through light trapped in pixels. The past, once lost to silence, has become endlessly replayable. But there is a strange irony to this progress. The more perfectly we can preserve a moment, the less real it becomes. A photograph does not smell like rain. A video cannot carry the warmth of a hand. Memory digitized is memory flattened, precise in detail but hollow in texture. What we keep is not the moment itself, but its shadow, a delicate pattern of zeros and ones pretending to be time. The dream of replaying the past perfectly has haunted philosophers and scientists alike. Imagine for a moment a computer so powerful that it could simulate every atom in a room, every photon of light, every whisper of air. Feed it enough data, and it could reconstruct a summer afternoon exactly as it was. The way sunlight fell on the wall, the dust that floated through it, the faint rhythm of a heartbeat somewhere nearby. Would that reconstruction be the past, or only an imitation? Some thinkers believe that if such a simulation were perfect, it would be indistinguishable from reality, not a copy, but a new instance of the same event. Others argue that the past is defined by its unrepeatability. Even if you could rebuild every atom exactly as it was, you could never restore the original, because the original existed in a sequence that moved on. Time is a story told once. Its repetition is another story entirely. Computers, of course, are not sentimental. They preserve what we tell them to. Each bit of memory, each tiny switch, holds a fragment of information at the cost of energy. As the philosopher Rolf Landauer once said, even erasing a bit of data produces heat. To remember or forget requires work. In that sense, every archive, every database, every server farm glowing in the dark is a living metaphor for time itself, a structure that records change at the price of energy. But the digital world has introduced something new, a form of immortality detached from experience. Your photos, your messages, your traces online may outlive you by centuries. They are fragments of you frozen in a permanent present, untouched by decay. This is both comforting and eerie. We used to think memory faded for a reason, to make space for new life. Now our machines remember endlessly, while our minds still forget. This technological form of remembrance raises a deeper question. What happens when we begin to trust machines more than ourselves? Already, artificial intelligence systems can reconstruct faces from aging photos, recreate voices from seconds of audio, and even generate new stories that sound like the ones we've already told. In doing so, they blur the line between remembering and imagining. If a computer can create a new memory that feels real, has it remembered something, or invented it? Physicists might call this a kind of decoherence, the process by which a delicate quantum state collapses into one definite outcome. When we capture a memory digitally, we collapse an infinite set of possibilities into a single frame. The richness of maybe becomes the certainty of was. Yet even this certainty is fragile. Files degrade, formats change, servers fail. In the long run, nothing is permanent, not even digital time. And yet, we keep trying. Because deep down, the desire to preserve is not just scientific, it's emotional. We want to hold on to the things that make us human. Laughter, touch, love, loss. And technology offers a promise, however hollow, that we can keep them forever. When you scroll through old messages or replay a video of someone's voice long after they're gone, you're performing a quiet ritual of resurrection. The person is not there, but something of their rhythm is. The ancients once believed that to speak the name of the dead was to bring them back to life, even if only for a moment. Perhaps our servers and hard drives are just modern altars to that same instinct. We speak to our machines, and they answer in echoes. But memory, whether human or digital, is not free. It takes energy to remember, and even more to forget. Every saved file, every backup consumes power and space. The more we preserve, the more heat we generate, a faint but growing warmth that spreads across the planet. It's strange to think that the act of remembering, multiplied billions of times, now shapes the Earth's climate itself. Our collective nostalgia radiates outward as light and warmth, like a cosmic afterglow of human consciousness. Perhaps this is what it means to be a species aware of time, to spend energy turning the transient into the lasting, to fight entropy with memory, even though entropy always wins. But there's a quiet beauty in the attempt. The fact that we remember at all, that we care enough to preserve, is what gives meaning to the forward flow of time. When you look at an old photograph, notice how your mind fills in what's missing. The smell of the air, the weight of that moment, the sound of laughter just outside the frame. You're not just recalling, you're recreating. You are, in your own small way, simulating the past. So maybe our computers aren't the first to remember everything. Maybe we are. Each of us carries a universe of stored light, neural constellations flickering with moments that no one else can replay. The machine outside us is only an extension of the one within. In the end, no matter how perfect our archives become, what they preserve isn't time itself, but our longing to touch it again. And perhaps that longing, that quiet insistence on remembering, is what truly makes us human, the softest rebellion against the forgetting nature of the universe. If the computer that remembers everything is a kind of digital past, then its twin, the one that predicts, is our window into the future. Every day, in quiet rooms humming with electricity, machines watch patterns of weather, traffic, illness, and human behaviour. They look ahead, not with magic, but with mathematics. In a sense, they are the new prophets, algorithms translating the laws of probability into glimpses of tomorrow. You've seen this already, even if you haven't noticed. Your phone predicts when you'll arrive home. The internet guesses what you'll buy next, and climate models estimate what the sky will look like 50 years from now. Behind every forecast is the same principle. If you know how things change, and you know their current state precisely enough, you can project what comes next. Newton's laws once promised a perfectly predictable universe, a clockwork world that would tick forever. But as we learned, the cosmos is more fluid than that. The equations may guide the melody, yet the notes themselves can still surprise. Even so, we've grown used to living surrounded by simulated futures. Each time a weather map unfolds on your screen, you're watching 1,000 potential Earths being calculated in parallel. One where clouds linger, one where they break, one where the storm never forms at all. The patterns that survive are the most likely. When we step outside with an umbrella, we're trusting the future written in a computer's quiet code. The irony is that prediction feels a little like time travel, not in body, but in thought. You experience events before they exist, your mind leaping ahead to test possibilities. The brain itself is built this way. Neuroscientists call it predictive processing. Your mind is constantly guessing what comes next, the next sound, the next sensation, the next emotion, and adjusting when it's wrong. Even perception is a forecast refined by feedback. You don't just see, you predict and then confirm. That's why time feels smooth instead of disjointed. You're always living a few milliseconds ahead of reality, anticipating the next frame of experience. In that sense, we're all tiny simulators, running endless experiments about the future and checking them against what really happens. Artificial intelligence is simply an extension of that, our collective attempt to build an external version of the same predictive instinct. It takes in vast amounts of data, builds models and guesses what's next. When it's right, it feels almost alive. When it's wrong, it reminds us how fragile knowledge is. There's something philosophical hidden here. If the universe obeys consistent laws, then every future moment already has its place in the grand design, even if we can't see it. When computers calculate future weather, they're not conjuring something from nothing. They're uncovering a part of the pattern that already exists, the way sculptors reveal a figure hidden inside stone. Some physicists even suggest that, in a block universe, the future is as real as the past. We just haven't reached it yet. So perhaps when we simulate tomorrow, we're not inventing it. We're visiting it, briefly, imperfectly, through mathematics and memory. Every forecast is a small act of time travel, a handshake between the known and the not yet. But prediction is a double-edged gift. Knowing the shape of what may come doesn't always bring peace. Consider climate models that warn of rising seas, or genetic analyses that predict disease before it appears. Knowledge can empower, but it can also burden. If you knew your future precisely, would you live it freely or fearfully? Would you cherish each moment or spend your days trying to rewrite what's already written? In ancient myths, prophecy was rarely a blessing. It carried a kind of curse, the agony of knowing what cannot be changed. Perhaps that's why the universe conceals its future behind a veil of uncertainty. The equations might allow prediction, but chaos ensures surprise. A butterfly flaps its wings, a thought flickers, and a new timeline begins. The smallest changes ripple outward until prediction becomes approximation. That's not a failure of physics, it's a gift. It's what allows free will to coexist with law. Our modern prophets, the algorithms, the models, the neural networks, don't yet understand this subtlety. They produce futures that feel inevitable, forgetting that the act of observing a prediction can change the outcome. Tell a person the market will fall, and they might sell early, causing the very fall they feared, or preventing it altogether. Knowledge bends reality, and reality bends knowledge back. The future isn't fixed, it's a conversation. Some thinkers take this idea further. They suggest that if a simulation ever became truly perfect, able to calculate every atom, every thought, then it would cease to be a simulation at all. It would be a universe, self-consistent and complete. In that case, how could we know we aren't already inside one? The notion seems fanciful, but consider this. If the physical laws that govern our world can be expressed as information, and information can be computed, then perhaps our reality is a grand calculation unfolding in cosmic time. Each particle, each heartbeat, each decision might be a line in the universe's program. But if that's true, who or what runs the program? And does it matter? Even if our world were simulated, its feelings would still be real. Pain would still hurt, love would still heal, and time would still flow in one direction for those within it. A simulated sunset still warms the eyes of those who see it. Meaning doesn't depend on what's outside the code, it arises inside, wherever awareness exists. That's the quiet truth about all our predictions and simulations. They don't eliminate mystery, they refine it. Every model, no matter how accurate, leaves room for wonder, a space where uncertainty breathes. The future can be glimpsed, but never fully known, because knowing changes it. So when you look at a forecast, and whether it's the weather, the markets, or your own plans, remember that you're peeking into a mirror that reflects not only the world, but your place within it. The reflection isn't fixed, it shimmers, responding to every new motion. The future isn't waiting out there somewhere, it's continuously being written in the choices you make right now. Perhaps that's the universe's most merciful trick. It shows us just enough of the road ahead to keep us moving, but not enough to rob us of wonder. Prediction without certainty, pattern without perfection. That's how time protects both order and freedom. And maybe, when all the data centers go silent one day, when the last forecast fades, the real future will be what it has always been, not a simulation, but a surprise. Long before we divided days into hours and seconds, the world already kept its own quiet time. It was written in the rhythm of rain, in the steady pull of the moon across the tides, in the tilt of the earth and the migration of birds. Ancient people didn't measure time, they lived it. Morning was when the air turned gold, and night was when the crickets began their song. The harvest didn't arrive because a calendar commanded it, but because the soil whispered that it was ready. Then came the clock, first as a shadow on stone, then as water dripping through carved basins, then as gears turning in wooden towers. When humans learned to count the moments between sunrise and sunset, something shifted inside us. We became aware not just of seasons, but of intervals, of waiting. The earliest mechanical clocks were built not for convenience, but for devotion. In medieval monasteries, monks needed to know when to pray. Bells marked the hours, not to hurry life along, but to give it structure, to remind the mind of rhythm. Each chime was a pulse of eternity, dividing the day into sacred repetitions. To them, time was not a thief, it was a ladder to something higher. As the centuries passed, that sacred rhythm became something else. The tick of the clock moved from churches to city squares, then to factories. The Industrial Revolution turned time from a spiritual guide into a measurement of labour. The clock's face, once a symbol of harmony, became a command. Faster, sooner, again. The sound of ticking lost its softness and became a whip. Yet even in this mechanised world, the heartbeat of nature never vanished. Farmers still watched the sky more than their watches, sailors still trusted the stars, and poets, even surrounded by gears and steam, wrote of time as something that breathed. The clock, one of them said, doesn't run, it walks. We forget sometimes that the clock is a story we built to make sense of change. It doesn't measure the universe, it measures our relationship to it. Each second we count is a promise to ourselves that life can be managed, that the unknown can be divided into manageable pieces. But the universe doesn't care for seconds. To a mountain, a century is a sigh. To a photon of light, crossing billions of kilometres, time barely exists at all. The more precise our clocks became, the more anxious we grew. In the 20th century, Scientists built atomic clocks so accurate that they would lose less than a second over millions of years. They measure the vibration of cesium atoms, tiny oscillations so fast they would blur the mind to imagine them. And yet, these perfect instruments haven't brought us peace. They've only sharpened our awareness of how little time we have. You can feel it in modern life, that constant tug between hurry and hunger. Notifications, deadlines, schedules, all whispering that the next moment matters more than the one you're in. Time, once a companion, has become a competitor. We race it instead of walking beside it. But every so often something stills us. A sunset, a slow song, the steady breathing of someone asleep beside us. And for a while, the machinery of the world fades. In those pauses, we return to something older than clocks, the art of waiting. Waiting is not inaction. It's a form of listening. The seed waits for spring. The spider waits for the tremor in its web. A good cook waits for bread to rise, knowing that rushing ruins it. In a way, all creation depends on patience. Even the universe had to wait for its first stars to form, cooling for hundreds of millions of years before light truly bloomed. Some scientists have compared the universe's early years to a great fermentation, energy settling, particles combining, slow chemistry ripening toward complexity. If creation itself unfolds through waiting, then perhaps patience is not weakness, but participation. To wait is to move at the pace of reality. Our digital world, however, doesn't like to wait. We can summon almost anything, food, music, conversation, in an instant. But this convenience has a quiet cost. The less we wait, the more shallow time feels. When everything arrives immediately, moments lose their depth. They pass like images scrolling on a screen, bright, fleeting, forgettable. It's not that technology stole our time. It just made us forget that we were its creators. We built clocks to measure life, and now we let them define it. Yet the solution isn't to abandon timekeeping, but to reclaim it. To remember that the tick is only a suggestion, not a command. Try, just for a moment, to notice how time feels when you don't measure it. Sit near a window and watch how the light shifts on the floor. Breathe slowly, long enough to feel your pulse match the rhythm of your breath. This is time as it was before clocks, not divided, not counted, just happening. Even in the busiest city, there are secret pockets where the old rhythm survives. The pause between traffic lights, the hush before rain, the silence that falls in a crowded room when everyone stops talking at once. Time reveals itself in those spaces, not in the ticking seconds, but in the stillness between them. Perhaps the art of waiting isn't lost. It only needs to be remembered. In an age of acceleration, slowness becomes an act of grace. The next time you find yourself impatient, in a line, in traffic, in conversation, try listening instead. What if the delay isn't wasting your time, but giving it back to you? The world, after all, doesn't move faster just because we do. The stars still rise at their own pace. The moon still lingers, unhurried, over the sea. The universe has never been in a rush. Only we have. So maybe that's what time has been trying to teach us since the first clock began to tick. Not how to count our moments, but how to inhabit them. To live, not by the second hand's command, but by the quiet pulse beneath it. The rhythm of life itself, unmeasured, patient, and perfectly on time. If you could stand in the middle of the world and listen carefully, you'd hear not one rhythm, but millions. Each culture, each heart, each corner of the planet keeps time in its own way. For all our talk of seconds and minutes, time has never truly been one thing. It has always been many. In the Western world, time is usually imagined as a line, thin, straight, and forward-pointing. We talk about moving on, making progress, and getting ahead. The line stretches from birth to death, from past to future, from what was to what might be. It's the same logic that built history books and calendars that taught us to see life as a journey with milestones and deadlines. But not every culture shares this linear pulse. Among the Hopi people of the American Southwest, language itself dissolves the idea of past and future. In their words, what matters is not when something happens, but how it happens, whether it is becoming or has already become. The tense of verbs shifts with the completeness of experience, not with the ticking of a clock. To a Hopi speaker, time is less a corridor than a landscape. You don't move through it, you inhabit it. Far to the south, the Aymara of the Andes carry an idea even more startling. They point behind themselves when they speak of the future, and in front of themselves when they speak of the past. To them, what lies ahead is what's already known, visible, remembered. What lies behind is what cannot be seen, the unknown future. It's a quiet reversal of our assumptions, a reminder that we can't face what hasn't yet arrived. The future is literally behind us. Across the ocean, in India, time has long been imagined as a wheel. In Hindu cosmology, creation is not a single event but a cycle. Universe is born, destroyed, and reborn without end. The gods themselves ride this wheel, each rotation called a kalpa, an age lasting billions of human years. The Buddha later offered a gentler echo of the same idea, that every moment contains both birth and death, and that awareness, not duration, is what makes something eternal. To these traditions, time isn't something that races forward, but something that breathes. What we call beginning and end are simply the inhale and exhale of existence. You can feel that rhythm in the slow rituals of their cultures, in temple bells and meditation, in the circular dances of festivals where participants move not toward a finish, but around a centre. The act of circling becomes an act of remembering that nothing truly leaves, it only changes form. And then there are the Amandawa people of the Amazon, whose language has no word for time at all. They don't divide existence into past, present or future. Instead, they speak of seasons, of changes in the forest, of relationships between living things. A person is not 20 years old. They are at the stage of being a mother, or at the stage of being a grandfather. Time isn't an independent stream. It's a network of connections, an ecology of moments. When you step back and see all these ways of measuring life, the Western obsession with clocks begins to look almost peculiar. We treat time as a commodity to spend or waste, to manage or save. But other cultures remind us that time might not belong to us at all. It might be something we belong to. Even physics, in its quiet way, agrees. The more we study the universe, the more we see that time is local, personal and relative. It stretches and bends around mass and motion. It dilates and compresses depending on gravity, just as our perception expands and contracts with emotion. A day on Earth is not a day on Mars. The universe keeps many clocks, and none of them are wrong. When you think of it that way, human cultures are like galaxies, each spinning in its own temporal orbit, each with its own rhythm of days and ceremonies. The modern world, connected by satellites and screens, often flattens those orbits into one global schedule. Midnight in Tokyo links to noon in Paris, a heartbeat measured in coordinated seconds. But beneath that synchronized surface, the old rhythms survive. Somewhere right now, a village still lights its fires when the first star appears. A shepherd still judges the hour by the length of his shadow. A grandmother still knows when to plant by the call of a bird. We sometimes say that time is an illusion, but perhaps it's better understood as a language, one that every culture speaks with a different accent. Some talk in seasons, others in centuries. Some imagine cycles, others arrows. Together they form a conversation as vast as the sky itself. There's a quiet grace in realizing that eternity doesn't have to mean endlessness. It can mean depth, the feeling that a single moment holds the whole of life within it. You felt this before, in the small infinity of a loved one's gaze, or in the way music sometimes seems to stop time altogether. Those seconds are not long, but they are full. They prove that time's true richness comes not from its length, but from its intensity of being. Science gives us one kind of eternity, the billions of years that stretch before and after our lives. Spirituality gives us another, the stillness that fits inside a single breath. Both are true, and both belong to us. Maybe that's what all these different cultures are trying to tell us in their own ways, that time is not something to chase, but something to dwell in. The past, the future, the eternal, they are not places we go, but perspectives we hold. You can be ancient and newborn in the same moment. You can carry the weight of history in the lightness of now. So when you next look at a clock, imagine it not as a circle of numbers, but as a window into all these different worlds of time. Behind its ticking hands live the monks counting prayers, the farmers reading the rain, the physicists mapping space-time, and you, sitting here, breathing, existing in this one irretrievable second that, in its fullness, contains every other. The universe is vast enough to hold them all, linear and cyclical, measured and wordless, fleeting and eternal. Perhaps eternity isn't something we enter after time ends. Perhaps it's something we touch whenever we truly pay attention. If you sit very still and listen, really listen, you can sometimes feel time dissolve. The world keeps moving, of course. Distant cars, a clock ticking somewhere, your own heartbeat quietly marking its rhythm. But beneath all of it, there's a deeper hush. It's the silence that lingers between seconds, the pause before the next thought arrives. In that silence, the idea of before and after loosens its grip, and what remains is simple presence, the moment itself. For centuries, philosophers and scientists have tried to describe this elusive now, to measure it, to define it, to locate it in the flow of time. But each attempt only deepens the mystery. The present isn't a thing you can hold. It has no thickness, no edges. The moment you name it, it's already gone, replaced by another that feels just as immediate, just as fragile. In physics, there's an idea called the causal diamond, a poetic phrase for the limits of what any being can know. Imagine drawing two rays of light, one reaching out from where you are and one returning to you. The space between them forms a diamond shape, representing all the events that you could possibly witness or influence. Outside that diamond, reality continues, but it's forever beyond your reach. No signal can arrive from there in time for you to know it. No message you send can ever arrive there in return. It's the universe's quiet boundary of knowledge, the reminder that every observer, no matter how advanced, sees only a part of the whole. Physicists can even estimate how much information the universe can hold, how many distinct facts can exist within it. The number is almost unimaginable, larger than any star or galaxy count could express. Yet even that immensity has a ceiling. There is, in the principle, a maximum amount of information that can ever be known or stored by any civilization, any mind, any cosmos. No matter how clever our tools become, some mysteries will always remain just beyond the edge of the diamond. When you think about it, that's not discouraging. It's freeing. The unknown isn't a flaw in the universe, it's its invitation. Without mystery, there would be no curiosity, no wonder, no reason to wake and look at the sky. The limits of knowledge are what give meaning to the act of seeking. And maybe that's what the present moment really is. The only piece of reality where seeking and being meet. The past exists in memory, the future lives in imagination. Only the present allows both to touch. When you remember, you reach backward. When you dream, you reach forward. But when you're still, simply aware, breathing, watching light move across a wall, you're in the place where time folds into itself. Our ancestors understood this intuitively, long before physics gave it a name. Meditation, prayer, music, poetry, all are ways of slipping through the gaps between seconds. Even a pause in conversation, the moment before a child laughs, the instant when a candle flame steadies. These are doorways into the same timeless space. They don't require equations, only attention. Modern life, with all its precision, sometimes makes us forget this. We chase the next notification, the next achievement, the next hour, believing the future will deliver something the present lacks. But the present is never empty. It's overflowing with colour, with sound, with possibility. Every sense, every heartbeat, every breath is a thread in the vast fabric of now. The more we try to escape it, the thinner that fabric feels. The more we rest in it, the stronger it becomes. Some scientists, blending philosophy and physics, have begun to wonder if consciousness itself is what stitches time together. The equations of the universe can describe change, but they cannot describe awareness, the feeling of watching change happen. Without an observer, the cosmos might still evolve, but it would do so without story, without meaning. Awareness gives time texture. It's the way the universe learns what it is. You can glimpse this when you're caught in a moment so beautiful that you forget to name it. A sunrise, a note of music that seems to suspend the world, the face of someone you love when words fall away. In those instants, time doesn't stop, but it ceases to matter. You're no longer measuring or remembering, you're simply being. And that being is not separate from the flow of time. It is time, experienced from within. The mind likes to divide the world into steps, past, present, future. But nature doesn't seem to care about those borders. It moves in cycles, rhythms, returns. Even the atoms in your body are old beyond reckoning, forged in stars billions of years before you were born. The breath you just took might contain a molecule once inhaled by an ancient tree or by another living creature halfway across the world. The present moment isn't a point on a line, it's a confluence, the entire history of the universe meeting itself in you. And in that sense, maybe time isn't what passes, maybe it's what allows anything to be. It's not a river carrying us forward, but the water itself, the condition of existence. The universe doesn't move through time. It is time, unfolding and refolding endlessly, awareness by awareness, moment by moment. When we see it this way, the rush of our days softens. The race to do, to know, to become slows into something gentler. Gratitude. To exist at all, in this tiny window of awareness, is to be part of the universe's self-discovery. You're not late or early. You're precisely where the cosmos has placed its attention for now. So, as you listen to these words fade into silence, let yourself feel the strange, quiet gift of being here, in this exact heartbeat, at this point in the great story. The stars outside are ancient, the atoms within you older still, but this moment, this small crossing of thought and breath, has never happened before and will never happen again. It is the stillness that holds all other moments, the one place where time and eternity meet. And maybe, as you drift toward rest, you'll sense that meeting, the soft hum of everything that has ever been, folding gently around you.